Oh, wait a minute. Polar Seltzer Bill Willem has just entered the building. Polar Seltzer. Oh, no libations tonight. Iced chai with sweetened condensed milk. Oh, Bridget. Bridget, you know what has to be said about Bridget? She knows how to live. She's got this living thing, she's got a G-tude. I don't even know what that means, but it was a phrase that my father used. Boy, you got that G-tude, don't you? Yeah. Can somebody tell me what G-tude means? I know I'm late now, right? Right, jeez. I'm sitting here dinking around with stuff on my desk, and I got projects going every which way. But the project of the moment is Tuesday, 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 the day the time forgot, and the poetry rain. Wait. Fire! Got it. Everything's fine. Fire's out. Anyway, how's everybody doing? Where are we? We're at, it's August 23rd today, isn't it? Good. Closer we get to fall, the better I like it. Because I got to tell you, man, my head is just all fuzzy and, lint build-up, dust bunnies everywhere, We need some willy-nilly winds to come and just, give it a big whoosh, You remember the furnace cleaner guys that had the truck with the hot dogs on the back? Remember the hot dog truck? There was the furnace cleaner. There were these big vacuum bags that would inflate on the back of the truck, and they looked like weenies that were tied off at the top, and they would just sit there all full of air. Am I the only one that remembers the hot dog trucks? I've seen one fairly recently, I think. It hasn't been in the last 10 years I've seen a hot dog truck. I'm glad we had this chance to talk because, poetry, right. Well, I was trying to decide tonight whether I should start with Oldmanhood or the mailbag. We've got an ample mailbag tonight. It's good. And we've got riches in the mailbag. We've overflowed the mailbag once again. Some of the mailbag is going to have to be for next week. There are certain individuals who will be named later who tend to, when they send stuff, boy, they send a passel of it, Gotta dribble it out a little more in smaller chunks. Like tonight, I've only got 2 pieces of Oldmanhood to read to you. Only 2. Because I wrote other stuff this week, but it was all kind of based on the fuzzy head concept. And this may very well be too, but it seemed more lucid than the others, at least when I was reading it today. So check my lucidity before. Oldmanhood, let's just dive into this because my mind is just wandering all over the place. He's supposed to be writing, but there's a soft line drive into center field and the morning is wasted. For shame, old man. The barrel of the bat cracks and he bloops a little looper over the shortstop's head and we got ourselves a ball game. He tries to work up some decent guilt, but there's a high fly ball into deep left center, and it is going, and not coming back. And we're tied at 6 at the end of 9, and it's extra innings here at Wrigley. No, he cackles, not with evil, but with glee. Rolls a page into the machine, strokes the keys lightly, taking a few warm-up swings. 1 runner caught and a run down between first and second while another sneaks home from third. Cubbies win it in 11. Now the eyes are on the page and the sense of life seeping out through the soles of his feet seems like a slow roller up the third baseline. He'll have to check the stats, but he doesn't seem to need to report to anyone anymore. Days seep into him and he controls the flow. This page doesn't mind what kind of story it tells. You see, it's kind of, I don't know. I'm diving for pearls, coming up empty. I like this one a little better. No one reads poetry. It lies buried under a ton of fear and insecurity. There's a small group here in Oldmanhood who are trying to keep it breathing, We meet once a week to recite, invite, incite. We'd go all night if we could, some of us. It's a colorful group, and we always leave feeling better. We've all gotten to know some new people. Folks from all over the place have dropped by to listen and to comment on the readings. It might be the purest thing here in Oldmanhood. And maybe it's the purest thing anywhere. Most of our recently built urban architecture seems to have no poetry in it at all. The buildings look like minimum security prisons built above retail stores. The best literary associations we've heard in reference to them are Kafka and Huxley. It's kind of gloomy for us oldies, so the poetry is our salve. It's broader and smells like old books. It's deeper and makes us feel clean after. And whether it's fresh from the press or yellowed and wrinkled, it makes us think about hidden and forbidden skin and what it tasted like. Anyway, that's Oldmanhood for today, for this week. Goodness gracious. But the mailbag. Mailbag's healthy. Healthy, wealthy, and wise. Now, let me start with, I'm sorry, do I seem scattered? Or no, am I just saying that a lot? That's probably what's happening. John Gorski was in contact with us this week, and he sent me a batch of poems by another poet named Mark Hudson. He said, I want to try and send you a file of poems by Mark Hudson, a poet who studied with Nelson Bentley at the UW in the 70s. These are mostly nature-based and historical poems from his 1983 book, After Light. You might want to read some of these at the poetry break. Yeah. So these were sent in by John Gorski. So we're getting people who were referred to us, because John was found out about us through Theo, right? And is John here tonight? Oh, there's Finn Livingston, Patsy Kinney, Aaron Ochoa, dude, what up? Mark Kenny, Diane Schulstead, yeah. What else we got? No, I'm not seeing John Gorski. But anyway, John sent this sheaf of poems, and Mark Hudson studied at the UW. I don't know if he's still a local guy. I didn't have time this week to delve into these poets, but I like this stuff. I'm going to start with one that I found a little difficult. Oh, there's John. All right. Hey. I'm going to start with 16th century Icelandic chair. And forgive my pronunciations on some of these. 16th century Icelandic chair. Benedict Narfason made me, carved runes on my back, saying I belonged to Thorin Jonsdottir. Underneath, he cut a zodiac, ram and bull and scales, as if to say, this is a chair for contemplation of such things. After they beheaded the Bishop of Holar, her father, she kept much alone in my company. She set me by a window, where her custom was to study the changing light on the bay. In fair weather, with a brisk wind, ships would drive beyond the headland, soon lost in blowing cloud. Dragon-headed chair, she addressed me in a whisper. You too seem voyage eager, meant to glide under wind over the after the keen-eyed one. You too were branded by runes, and the knife made you beautiful, the bishop's daughter and her chair, peaceful as they seem. Know this, only in blood acts is knowledge born. What Najal saw through burning timbers by blood torch on swarthy air, and the small ones huddled there, watching fire gouge and scar, the hawk carving on his door, his eye deep in its orbit is what I see, sitting quietly here with my needles. Sends you right back up to the beginning again, doesn't it? Well, anyway, I wanted to read. Oh man, these are good. I like these. I like this one. This was called By La Push, and it's for Pablo Neruda. By La Push. It is Wednesday morning in eternity. For 10,000 miles the Pacific staggers against the coasts, and cormorants race the troughs of breaking waves. For 10,000 miles sea-mews and kittiwaks, insomnia of foghorn, gull-scudded headlands, and nobody gets any sleep. It sloshes the char and salt of Isla Negra, where a moon-belied grebe has washed ashore. It chugs up stolons of kelp and churns up clouds of petrels. The same bedlam today as always, same cries of the oyster-catcher, same clairvoyant of the tideland, and nobody gets any sleep here. Consider the mollusk. He's either clamped down or dead. Consider the fiddler crab playing shell games with turban snails. Christ, it's like a circus where all the masks have large mouths, spiny urchins, arthropluras, rhinoceros auklets. Nobody gets any sleep. Like suffering vertigo in an all-night house of mirrors, try to claim your body. That squat thing like a hand sheathed in horn, the coil of intestine with a jaw locally known as Aristotle's lantern, that night luminous-filled carrot some fool called a sea pen? Pronounce your name without slurring? You can't even walk a straight line. Go read your Ovid. Go read your Darwin. We're derelicts without identities. It's always Wednesday in this drunk tank, and nobody gets any sleep. Walter Hudson by LaPush. And I'll finish with this section with some gnomic verses, it's called. Some gnomic verses. Man will gouge elements from the earth, glacier scour gray stone. Silt fallen the river mouth, wimbrel and brant fly in autumn. Voices under Orion, salmon leap in the hungry sun, the dying man unravel his maze. Love is hardest, hail is coldest, gled burns the child's hand. Sea will shuttle among islands, wind work mutable cloud, memory is endless. Blue whale will breach, gouted with blood, dolphin thrash in the purse seine, birds at last light sing. Tears will scald the guilty sleeper, the revenant come for his red meal. Love is sweetest and most bitter. Softwood, apple, and yew is best to carve, copper to engrave, tungsten for the thin white flame. First leaf is most sheer, colt's foot earliest to flower, siskin lightest of birds. Time is cruelest to creatures who remember. Man is the calendar, kept by dust. So, Mark Hudson, he gets out there always, doesn't he? Yeah, he does indeed. Whew. Sweet stuff. Sweet stuff. Next, I want to read some stuff that Mark Kenny sent in. So, Mark, what I've decided to do is to save your poems for next week and read these other ones that you sent first. I could go the other way around. But I was fascinated by the Bradbury. Yeah, Mark sent some poems by Ursula Le Guin and Ray Bradbury. Here's what Mark said. Hi, Bill. I had picked these even before last week's poetry break. This was before last week's poetry break. But was on the fence on including any of my own after sharing several of my favorite authors' poems, thus your lighter email load for the past week. I am a longtime fan of fantasy, science fiction, and speculative fiction folk who also happen to write poetry. Ursula LeGuin and Ray Bradbury are two of my lifetime favorites. I'm including several of theirs here and ending with two of my own. The last one, an odd one written by me. Odd, isn't it? This quixotic muse that moves each of us to write. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding, buddy. I hear you. Okay, well, by my count, I'm seeing one Ursula Le Guin and then 1, 2, 3, 4 by Bradbury. Is that correct? Because there's only one that says by Ursula Le Guin, then there's Ray Bradbury, and then a bunch of titles. Unless this is all one. No, I don't think so. No. So, Ursula Le Guin first. This is called Kinship. Is everybody all right? Okay. I think I'm more worried than anybody else. Okay, here we go. Kinship by Ursula Le Guin. Very slowly burning, the big forest tree stands in the slight hollow of the snow melted around it by the mild, long heat of its being and its will to be, root, trunk, branch, leaf, and no earth-dark, sunlight, wind touch, bird song. Rootless and restless and warm-blooded, we blaze in the fire that blinds us to that slow, tall, fraternal fire of life as strong now as in the seedling 2 centuries ago. Ancestry. I am such a long way from my ancestors now, in my extreme old age, that I feel more one of them than their descendant. Time comes round in a bodily way I do not understand. Age undoes itself and plays the Ouroboros. I, the only daughter, have always been one of the tiny grandmothers, laughing at everything, uncomprehending, incomprehensible. Looking back, remember me before I was a heap of salt, the laughing child who seldom did as she was told or came when she was called, the merry girl who became Lot's bride, the happy woman who loved her wicked city. Do not remember me with pity. I saw you plodding on ahead into the desert of your pitiless faith. Those springs are dry, that earth is dead. I looked back, not forward, into death. Forgiving rains dissolve me, and I come still disobedient, still happy, home. Yeah. I like that one very much, Mark. I think I've got 2 of Ursula LeGuin's books. I don't know if she's got more than that. But anyway, that's probably one I read and did not even notice. Because you get like that sometimes when you're reading poetry. You know, you'll read a couple of 3 pages and you'll think, oh, my mind completely was not here during that poem. And you'll stick the bookmark in where you left off, close it, then you open it up and you never go back and read those last 3 again. I do this all the time. That's how I can talk about it. I have the right. Ray Bradbury. The first one's called I Have Endured Much to Reach This Place. Is Lori Trout here by chance? Cindy Snyder's here. Rochelle Hamill's here. Jeff Steve's here. Wow. Hi, guys. Welcome. Well, wait a minute, Mark. You're saying there's several, so that Kinship was one poem, Ancestry was one poem, and Looking Back was one poem? Because I read them all as one poem. Yeah. Okay. You need to here's a pro tip. Put your titles in all caps, the way you did Kinship for Le Guin. If your titles are in all caps, then I'll know what's a title and what isn't. Oh well, so I read 3 Ursula Le Guin poems instead of 1. So the first one was called Kinship. And then there was one called Ancestry and one called Looking Back. Now we're in Ray Bradbury. I have endured much to reach this place. I have endured much to reach this place in time, yet I have not been sick, nor mad, nor ruined in a wreck, and yet I feel I have. There is a thing in me. The walls of cells are thin, my veins are glass, my heart the merest whim of beat and pause and beat. Deaths in the street are mine. I would not have it so. I know much more than I would want to know. The breakfast headlines tell me of a war. I know they die out there. Put down my spoon. Men land on the moon tonight. I know their joy. The boy in me goes with them as they tread far overhead on dust world beyond reach. They teach my tired blood to love again. There's rain in downtown Peru tonight. I wash my face in it. In Indochina, one more massacre. I run a race in it and lose. You see, I cannot choose to be or not to be. I have endured much to reach this place. See, I have never read Ray Bradbury's poetry. I did not know it existed, but I was a major Bradbury head when I was a kid. Something Wicked This Way Comes. But all the, the Martian Chronicles, Illustrated Man, that kind of stuff. I loved that stuff when I was a kid. My dad liked Ray Bradbury. He turned me on to him. Here's one called I Have a Brother Mostly Dead. I have a brother mostly dead, an angle curled upon his head. Most of my life mostly unseen, and yet I feel with him I have been a cohort, playmate, friend, friends of Poe, who tours me where no live friends can't go. He teaches me this mortal park, and where the firefly stops for a spark, and how the shade within the night is a most fine delicious fright. I give him words, he gives me bone to play like piper than when alone, and so my brother, dead, you see, is wondrous literate company. Thus if my muse says, "Nevermore," I hear a tapping at my door. My brother comes to saviour me with graveyard biscuit, rictus tea, that tea in which, perused a while, one finds a lovely mummy's smile, and then again he bids me snuff Egyptian dusts, one pinch enough to knock my timbers, sneeze my brain, so idea ghosts sit up again to tap my eyelids, tick my nose, and shape themselves with words for clothes. And this my long-lost brother does, this sibling spent before my cause. He moves my hand, and lo, O Lord, his tombstone, my Ouija board. He shouts, "Stay not in buried room, come forth, sweet brother, flower my tomb." With words so rare and phrase so bright, they'll bonfire burn away the night. All this to me lost brother is, and I his live sweet Lazarus. His shout ignore, his cry refuse, no, no. Much thanks, long dead, fine muse. Whew. I think I can only do one more of these Bradburys. Then I want to move on to something else, okay? Where are we? What's my name? This one's called Too Much. Too much beauty, too much delight, too much sun, and much of night. It hurts my sight, it floods my heart, it knocks my dreams with half-sensed art. Too much of sky and thus of land, abundance brims on every hand, to power the soul and crush the blood with harvestings of wild and good, that cause one's cries to overflow with more than being can see or know. Vast libraries of touch and tell that soar in heaven to drop in hell. So lovely lean some sunset's fire, that I am tinder, torch, and pyre. So lovely sing lost birds at dawn, that I am up and flown and gone. And where soul was, an empty tree, full branches my lost blood and me. So breathing thus, and knowing much, I cry to God, too much! Too much! Ray Bradbury. Cool, huh? So next week we'll hear some Mark Kenny, okay? I'm saving this back. Yeah. Now, where is this? Oh, here we go. One of the Lame Cat Ranchers, actually both of the Lame Cat Ranchers, I got something from each of the Lame Cat Ranchers. First of all, Kim Nelson sent in a poem I'd never read, of course, so I've had to practice it a bit, and I may stumble a little in it because it's deeply rhythmic and in just a real sweet kind of almost jazz-like way. It's a poem by A.A. Milne called The Old Sailor. This is a sweet, hilarious poem by A.A. Milne that our pal and fellow musician here on Vashon read to us yesterday. It fits in so well with the old man theme, I think you'll like it. He wrote it all out for me here. He writes songs and poetry. Sometimes he sings Holly songs on his Wednesday half-hour show. Now, we need more information, of course, about that, Kim, because I'm sure people are looking for Wednesday evening programming in this new, grassroots media environment. So, thank you, Kim, for sending this in. The Old Sailor by A.A. Milne. There was once an old sailor my grandfather knew, who had so many things which he wanted to do that whenever he thought it was time to begin, he couldn't because of the state he was in. He was shipwrecked and lived on an island for weeks, and he wanted a hat, and he wanted some breeks, and he wanted some nets or a line and some hooks for the turtles and things which you read of in books. And thinking of this, he remembered a thing which he wanted for water, and that was a spring. And he thought that to talk to and he thought that to talk to, he'd look for and keep, if he found it, a goat or some chickens and sheep. Then, because of the weather, he wanted a hut with a door to come in by, which opened and shut with a jerk which was useful if snakes were about, and a very strong lock to keep savages out. He began on the fish hooks, and when he'd begun, he decided he couldn't because of the sun. So he knew that he ought to begin with, and that it was fine or to make a large sun-stopping hat. He was making the hat with some leaves from a tree, that when he thought, I'm as hot as a body can be, and I've nothing to take for my terrible thirst, so I'll look for a spring, and I'll look for it first. Then he thought as they started, oh dear, and oh dear, I'll be lonely tomorrow with nobody here. So he made in his notebook a couple of notes. I must first find some chickens, and, no, I mean goats. He had just seen a goat, which he knew by the shape, when he thought, but I must have a boat for escape. But a boat means a sail, which means needles and thread, so I'd better sit down and make needles instead. He began on a needle, but thought as he worked that if this was an island where savages lurked, sitting safe in his hut he'd have nothing to fear, whereas now they might suddenly breathe in his ear. So he thought of his hut, and he thought of his boat, and his hat and his breeks, and his chickens and goat, and the hooks for his food, and the spring for his thirst. But he never could think which he ought to do first. And so in the end he did nothing at all, but basked on the shingle wrapped up in a shawl. And I think it was dreadful the way he behaved. He had nothing but basking until he was saved. A. Milne. Thank you, Kim Nelson, for sending that in. Now, I found buried in the inbox from August 13th, goodness gracious, that Holly Tuttle had sent in another poem that she had written. So I wanted to make sure we got this in tonight. It's once again, it does not have a title, but I'll just call it The Night Man. That seems appropriate enough. Did I already drank it. Oh, there's Lori. Hey, Lori. I couldn't wait. I needed. I don't know if it helped yet or not. So this is by Holly Tuttle. It's called The Night Man. I'm calling it The Night Man. I don't know if it has a title or not. The Night Man at the home for aging nuns and priests. Behind your eyes, an infinite sea of loneliness. To talk to anyone of anything like gold to a conquistador. I'll give you what I can, but after all, we're only here to fix the pipes. I'll read that one more time. I'll give it a Tim Swagger memorial reading, even though Tim's not dead. The Night Man at the home for aging nuns and priests. Behind your eyes, an infinite sea of loneliness. To talk to anyone of anything like gold to a conquistador. I'll give you what I can, but after all, we're only here to fix the pipes. You know? I'm only here to fix the pipes, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Okay. Sorry if I'm scatterbrained, but I am. So why not just go for it? Just go with it, Bill. Now I was going to read that Tony Hoagland poem that I was afraid to read last week. But I think I might be afraid to read it again. Did I read the reason he brought his... No, that's not the one. Did I read... It's a noisy book. I'm even moving it. It's making it... It's the hand, ladies and gentlemen. The hand is the hand. The hand. The hand. The hand. Nothing up my sleeve. Presto. Sorry if I sprained something. I was kind of pulling on it, on the hand. I didn't mean to. What we got here? What's going on? What's happening? What's the deal? What's Jeff, Steve, and Diana? Diana's with you, Jeff? Hold on. Diana. Let me say that Jeff did not notify me in advance that he was bringing you tonight. So, It's between you guys. That's all I'm saying. Sorry. Okay, so we got Theo is in the house, Janine and Julie. Both you guys are here. Heidi Muller, there's Heidi. Rochelle, Lori, Patsy, Hayden. God, Patsy, good to see you. Bill Willem, Bridget Lacey, Cindy Snyder, Hayden Reese, Heidi Muller and Bob Webb, Kim Nelson, Jeff Steve, Sandra Swayze, Patsy Kinney, John Gorski, Percy Hilo. Hey, Percy! Rochelle Hamilton, I mentioned her, Finn Livingston, Mark Kinney, Linda Rosales, Lori Trout, Carl Word. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. Well, there you go. Did I read Tony Hoagland's The Reason He... No, that's not the one, Bill. Why do you keep going to that one? That's the one you don't want to read. Why I Like the Hospital. Did I read that last week? I should have checked my records. Wait, I don't have any records. I've got a lot of CDs. Anyway, Why I Like a Hospital. I'm just going to read it again, because I'll read this one. Because it is all right to be in a bad mood there. I did read this last week, didn't I? Slouching along through the underground garage, riding wordlessly on the elevator with the other customers, staring at the closed beige doors like a prison wall. I like the hospital for the way it grants permission for pathos. The mother with cancer deciding how to tell her kids. The bald girl gazing downward at the shunt installed above her missing breast. The crone in her pajamas walking with an IV pole. I don't like the smell of antiseptic, or the air conditioning set on high all night, or the fresh flowers tossed into the wastebaskets. But I like the way some people on their plastic chairs break out a notebook and invent a complex scoring system to tally up their days on Earth. The column on the left says, times I acted like a fool, facing the column on the right that says, times I acted like a saint. I like the long prairie of the waiting, the forced intimacy of the self within the self, each sick person standing in the middle of a field like a tree wondering what happened to the forest. And once I saw a man in a lime green dressing gown, hunched over in a chair, a man who was not yelling at the doctors or pretending to be strong or making a murmured phone call to his wife, but one sobbing without shame, pumping it all out from the bottom of the self, the overflowing bilge of helplessness and rage, a man no longer expecting to be saved. But if you looked, you could see that he was holding his hand, in his own hand, in sympathy, listening to every single word, and he was telling himself everything. Maybe I didn't read that last week. I don't know. But boy, that's a good poem, you know? The thing about Tony Hoagland is he does not pull his punches, you know? He does not pull his punches. I'm going to have to be in a different kind of headspace to read that one. But I am continuing with this book. See, that's the thing. It's like I've been kind of getting mired in certain poets, and I'm like, I don't want to read the same people every week. But I've been reading, you know, and treating it with much more respect than I just did. And I've also been reading, yeah, another one, a different one. And I've also been reading, you know, I can't help it. And then I just got this. So, yeah, it's a great title for a book. My vocabulary did this to me. Yeah. If he hadn't taken it, that's what I would call my collected poems. So I'm just going to try some things. You know, some things that I've been working with, and I'm not sure that I'm all the way into it yet. But this book here, yeah, James Welch, writing the Earth Boy 40. This is a classic that I knew nothing about. I didn't know James Welch wrote poetry. Well, he wrote one book of poetry. But he studied with Richard Hugo at the University of Montana, so he must have written some poetry. And this was fairly early in his career that he published this book initially, I think. But we'll see what happens. Where's that first one? That was the first one. So the first one I'm going to read is called Directions to the Nomad. And I definitely hear some Richard Hugo-like, maybe it's the pacing. I don't know what it is. Something in the language he's choosing. Directions to the Nomad. Past the school and down this little incline. You can't miss it. Tons of bricks and babies blue from the waist down. Their heads are cheese and loll as though bricks became their brains. What's that? The noble savage? He's around, spooked and colored by the fish he eats, red for rainbow, blue for the moon. He instructs stars, but only to the thinnest wolf. When you get there, tell the mad, decaying creep we miss him. We never meant it. He'll treat you right, show you poems the black bear couldn't dream. One more thing, if he tries to teach you mountains or whisper imagined love to the tamarack, tell him you adore him, then get the hell out fast. Have I read that one before? See, I can't keep track of this stuff. I'm going to read it again. Directions to the Nomad. Past the school and down this little incline. You can't miss it. Tons of bricks and babies blue from the waist down. Their heads are cheese and loll as though bricks became their brains. What's that? The noble savage? He's around, spooked and colored by the fish he eats, red for rainbow, blue for the moon. He instructs stars, but only to the thinnest wolf. When you get there, tell the mad decaying creep we miss him. We never meant it. He'll treat you right, show you poems the black bear couldn't dream. One more thing, if he tries to teach you mountains or whisper imagined love to the tamarack, tell him you adore him, then get the hell out fast. Yeah, I know there's at least one more in here. These are dense. And he's laying things on top of things that don't always seem to immediately relate. You know how he's doing that? I love how people can do that. I love what people can do with words, just stacking them up in a funny order, you know? Then you read it aloud and you're like, oh. You know? When was the last time words made you go, well, this stuff kind of does. It does me anyway, but it lights me up. Christmas comes to Moccasin Flat. This is gold. Christmas comes like this. Wise men, unhurried, candles bought on credit, poor price for cabs. Warriors face down in wine's sleep. Winds cheat to pull heat from smoke. Friends sit in chinked cabins, stare out plastic windows and wait for commodities. Charlie Blackbird, 20 miles from the church and bar, stabs his fire with flint. When drunks drain radiators for love or need, chiefs eat snow and talk of change. On urge to laugh, pounding their ribs, elk play games in high country. Medicine woman, clay pipe and twist tobacco, calls each blizzard by name and predicts 5 o'clock by spitting at her television. Children lean into her breath to beg a story. Something about honor and passion, warriors back with meat and song, a peculiar evening star, quick vision of birth. Blackbird feeds his fire, outside a quick 30 below. Yeah. James Welch. He's got dance. He's got music in his words. You gotta respect the guy for that. I wish I had more of that. So I'll read the title poem, Writing the Earth Boy 40. Let me just read this, some of this blurb here on the back. Blah, blah, blah. The work of James Welch is a great American writing, and Writing the Earth Boy 40 is a quiet classic. As a writer, I will always be in his debt. As a reader, I'm just grateful. That's Louise Erdrich talking about this book, the only book of poems he ever did. Not very thick. This first and only book of poetry by James Welch became the touchstone for a generation who were figuring out a poetry that had to be assembled from broken treaties, stolen lands, the blues, horses, fast cars, and long, rough nights. It remains a classic of American poetry. Jim showed a way to move with grace through all the wounds, the effect something like grease, so we could slide through the pain and in this world a little easier. He gave companionship. In that end, that's what matters, what survives us. That's Joy Harjo talking about this book. The Earthboy 40 refers to 40 acres of land that belonged to a family called Earthboy that his father, I think, used to lease. Right? It's spelled out in the, yeah. The book's title refers to the 40 acres Welch's father leased from the Earthboy family on the Gross Venture Reservation, the land in the rougher terrain of the Blackfeet Reservation, some 150 miles west, shaped Welch's worldview as a youth. There you go. Writing the Earthboy 40, this is called. Earthboy. So simple his name should ring a bell for sinners. Beneath the clowny hat, his eyes so shot the children called him dirt. Earthboy farmed this land and farmed the sky with words. The dirt is dead. Gone to seed, his rose became marker to a grave vast as anything but dirt. Bones should never tell a story to a bad beginner. I ride romantic to those words, those foolish claims that he was better than dirt, or rain that bleached his cabin white as bone. Scattered in the wind, Earthboy calls me from my dream. Dirt is where the dreams must end. Yeah. James Welch. I don't know, but reading James Welch makes me want to read more James Welch. That's a good sign. I always take that as a good sign. I do. I do. Okay. One last thing that I wanted to do, and I read this probably on a Treehouse concert. Yeah, you remember the Treehouse concert, don't you? I should say that my hands have improved some. And I discovered icing my forearms, which I think will also help. So my plan is to start playing some shows around town again here, just any minute, as soon as I work up the stones. No, I've got one gig booked in October already, and yeah, so good things are happening on the music front. I haven't written any new songs, of course. Yeah. I wanted to reread some Gary Snyder. I wanted to reread a section from Mountains and Rivers Without End that I love very much. There's a Lannon video that I had. I've got it on VHS. It's still downstairs in the garage. Where he's reading sections from Mountains and Rivers Without End as an older man. I think this was either short, like the year before he finally published it in '96. And I just loved this when I heard him read it. And it was just... It's called Walking the New York Bedrock, Alive in the Sea of Information. So this is Gary Snyder taking his ethos to the streets of New York. That's right. Hey, Cabby, over here. Walking the New York Bedrock, Alive in the Sea of Information. When Snyder was 19, he hitchhiked to New York because he wanted to get on a merchant ship with a friend of his. And he found out, or Snyder found out, that he was going to have to wait a month before his seaman papers could be processed and he would be able to get a ship. So he actually camped in Central Park for about 4 weeks while he was waiting to get his seaman papers. He did. So that's where this poem begins. Walking the New York Bedrock, Alive in the Sea of Information. Maple, oak, poplar, ginkgo, new leaves, new green. On a rock ledge of steep little uplift, tucked among trees, hot sun dapple, wake up. Roll over and slide down the rock face. Walk away in the woods toward a squirrel, toward rare people, seen from a safe distance. A murmur of traffic approaching. Siren howls echoing through the gridlock of structures vibrating with helicopters, the bass tone of a high jet. Leap over the park stone wall, dressed fast and light, slip into the migrating flow. New York, like a sea anemone, wide and waving in the sea of economy. Cadres of educated youth in chic costume step out to the nightlife, good food, after work, in the chambers of prana subtle power-pumping heartbeat buildings. Fired, deep at the bottom, under the basement, fired by old merchant marine ex-fire tenders, gone now from sea, to the ships stood on end on the land. Ex-seamen stand watch at the stationary boilers, give way to computers that monitor heat and the power webs underground, in the air, in the sea of information. Excuse me. Brisk flesh, keen-eyed, streams of people curve round the sweep of street corners, cardboard chunks tossed up in truck bed, delicate jiggle, rouge on the nipple, coal under the eye. Time and life buildings, 60,000 people, wind ripples the banners, stiff shudder shakes limbs on the planted trees growing new green. Glass, aluminum, aggregate gravel, iron, stainless steel. Hollow honeycomb brain buildings owned by Columbia University, the landlord of an enemy colony alive in the sea of information. Klaus the wild man lived mostly with Indians, was there as a witness when the old lady Caracapacomont sold the last bit of Washington Heights, 1701. Down deep grates, hear the watercourse, rivers that never give up, trill under the roadbed, over the bedrock. A bird angles way off a brownstone couloir that looks like a route. Echo the hollowing darkness, criss-crossing light threads, gleams, squeals up the side streets, one growl shadow in an egg of bright lights. Lick of black on the tongue, echoes of sirens come down the walled canyons, foot lifts to the curb, and the lights change. And look up at the gods. Equitable God, Celanese God, noble line, old Union Carbide God, each catching shares of the squared, blocked shadow, each swinging in sundial arc of the day, more than the sum of its parts. The Guggenheims, the Rockefellers, and the Fricks, assembling the art of the world, the plate glass window lets light in on the water lilies. Like fish or planets, people move, pause, move through the rooms. White birch leaves shiver in breezes, while guards watch the world, helicopters making their long, humming trips, trading pollen and nectar in the air of the sea of economy. Drop under the street world, steel squeal of stopping and starting, wind blows through black tunnels, spiderwebs, fungus, lichen. Ginkgo trees of Gondwana land, pictographs, petroglyphs, cover the subways, empty eye sockets of buildings just built, soulless. They still wait the ceremony that will make them too new big city gods. Provided with conduit, cable, and plumbing, they will light up, breathe cool air, breathe the minds of the workers who work there. The cloud of their knowing as they soar in the sky, in the air of the sea of information. Cut across alleys and duck beneath trucks, under destruction, trash chair at the curb, stop to gaze on the large Roman letters of writing on papers that tell of economy. Skill saw whine slips through the windows, empty room, no walls, such clear air in the cellar, dry brick, cooked clay, rusty house bodies, carbide blade skill saw cuts bricks, squalls from the steps leading down to the subway. Blue-chested runner, a female, on car streets, red lights block traffic, but she, like the beam of a streetlight or the whine of the skill saw, she runs right through. A cross street leads toward a river, north goes to the woods, south takes you fishing. peregrines nest at the 35th floor. Street people rolling their carts of whole households, or asleep wrapped in light blue blanket spring evening at dusk in a doorway. Eyeballing arites and buttresses rising above them, condomus, dominion, domus, condominate, condominium, towers. Up there, the clean, crisp, white dress, white skin women and men who occupy the sunnier niches. Higher up on the layered stratigraphy cliffs, get more photosynthesis, flow by more ostracods, get more sushi, gather more flesh, have delightful cascading laughs. Peregrine sails past the window off the edge of the word chain, harvesting concepts, theologies, snapping up bites of the bits bred by banking, ideas that wild speculations on new information and stoops in a blur on a pigeon. As the street bottom feeders with shopping carts slowly check out the air for the fall of excess, of too much, flecks of extra from the higher up folks in the sky. As the fine dusk gleam lights a whole glass side of 40-some stories, soft, liquid silver. Beautiful buildings we float in, we feed in, foam, steel, gray, alive in the sea of information. That is one of my all-time favorite Gary Snyder poems. From Mountains and Rivers Without End, or from the collected poems of Gary Snyder. Yeah, well, folks, I believe that's about all I got for you tonight. Yep, that's it. I don't know, to me it just felt like a big swirling mess, but hopefully it wasn't like that at your end. I gotta tell you, warm weather does some oddball things. If not to the body, then to the mind. It's all just kind of a stew, but we made it through. Hey, that rhymed. Sorry. So we'll do this again next week, as far as I know. The creek don't rise. And, the outlaws don't take us down in the meantime. Thanks for coming, Heidi. Thanks for coming, Hayden, Rochelle, Bill, Mark, Kim, Lori, Cindy, of course. You guys are great. You're keeping me going. I hope this is, I hope there's some uplift involved in this, even if it's just, really good words in interesting orders. That's basically what poetry is. Interesting words used differently than you've ever heard them used before. Yeah, it's just for that. Maybe it's just me that's into it. I don't know. Maybe my mom is still sending out checks. Maybe the hand has started sending out checks. By the way, thanks, Mom. Like I'm supposed to do something about that? Forget about it, okay? All right. Have a poetic week. We will see you again right back here. Same bad time, same bad channel.